I'm Rachel Morgan, 28, and my graduation day couldn't have been more different from Chloe's. While she cruised away in a shiny new car, courtesy of our parents, Deborah and Michael, I boarded a city bus, wearing a rented cap and gown. That scene captures the essence of how our lives have always played out. Things seemed to fall effortlessly into place for her, while I had to hustle for every inch of progress. The dynamic was established early on, though no one could have imagined how dramatically that final college ceremony would unfold, or that the name announced for the Chancellor's Award would be mine. Before I explain how I transformed from overlooked older daughter to recognized achiever, feel free to share your own college story in the comments. Did anyone else have to finance their education solo? Hit subscribe if you've ever turned hardship into success. The first time I realized the stark difference in how Deborah and Michael treated Chloe and me was on my 7th birthday. Just 6 months earlier, Chloe had been treated to an extravagant princess-themed bash. For my celebration, a few store-bought cupcakes in our backyard with friends. When I asked Deborah why Chloe had a bouncy castle and a magician, while mine was so simple, she gently tousled my hair and said, "You're not really into all that frilly stuff, Rachel. You're our sensible girl." That phrase became the backdrop to my entire childhood. Chloe was seen as needing extra care, while I was assumed to be self-sufficient. This pattern repeated itself at every major event. On my 10th birthday, I received a second-hand bicycle from a yard sale, while Chloe got a brand new one, because balancing had always been difficult for her. When Chloe was placed on the B team for middle school volleyball, Deborah and Michael made it to every single match, leaving work early and adjusting their routines just to be there. But when Rachel took first place at the regional science fair in 8th grade, they didn't show because Chloe had a dentist appointment that same day. By the time I turned 15, I had come to terms with where I stood in our family dynamic. That summer, I landed my first job at the neighborhood grocery store, pushing carts and packing groceries. I carefully saved every dollar to buy school clothes for the fall. In the meantime, Chloe went on a mall shopping spree, with Deborah returning with arms full of brand new outfits. One evening, while drying dishes beside Michael, I finally asked, "Why does Chloe get new clothes every season, while I have to buy mine?" He exhaled deeply that same weary sigh that always signaled one of those justifications I'd heard too often. "Your sister struggles with self-esteem, Rachel. Dressing well helps her feel like she belongs. You've always been so confident in yourself. We admire that independence." His words stung, even though they carried a strange sense of reluctant praise. Was I genuinely more grounded and capable, or had they simply assigned us roles from the beginning and never bothered to reconsider? By the time high school rolled around, the contrast between us became even sharper. Chloe cycled through a series of pricey hobbies, horseback riding, then photography, and later private voice lessons. Each time our parents eagerly footed the bill. Meanwhile, I joined the debate team and school newspaper, mostly because they didn't cost anything. I spent my weekends and school breaks working, setting aside half my earnings for future college expenses and using the rest for essentials. When senior year came, I had a flawless GPA, was named valedictorian, and had earned several competitive scholarships. Chloe, attending the same school, held a steady B average. Then one evening in October over dinner, our parents finally revealed their college plans. "We've put money aside for Chloe to attend Westfield University," Deborah announced with pride. "It's a costly school, but we're confident she'll flourish there with the additional academic resources they provide. I sat there waiting, hoping for them to mention anything about support for my education. The pause dragged on thick with tension. "What about my college?" I finally asked, gently placing my fork on the table. Michael and Deborah shared that familiar glance, the one I'd seen too many times, the one that meant they'd been hoping I wouldn't ask. "Well," Michael began clearing his throat, "we assumed you'd be fine with your grades and all the scholarships you've been applying for. You've always been responsible with money. And you've got that nice little savings account from your jobs." The truth hit me like a gut punch. There was no financial plan for me, not a cent set aside. Everything had been earmarked for Chloe while I was expected to somehow make it work on my own. "So Chloe gets full funding and I'm on my own," I said softly, barely recognizing my own voice. "It's not like you have nothing," Deborah said quickly. "You've earned scholarships, and we've always admired how self-sufficient you are. But Chloe really needs this support. College won't be easy for her." I pushed my chair back, my appetite gone. "And it'll be easy for me. Just because I've worked hard and kept my grades up doesn't mean college won't be difficult or expensive." "Rachel, don't be so dramatic," Michael said, his voice firm. "We've always believed you'd land on your feet. That's just the kind of person you are." That night, I stayed up combing through financial aid websites, my eyes burning with tears, as I completed application after application. Princeton University. My dream school had invited me to apply through early decision, but the reality quickly set in. Even with scholarships, the costs were far beyond reach, without help from my parents. By December, I committed to State University, grateful for the merit-based scholarship that covered roughly 60% of my tuition. The remainder, along with housing and living expenses, would have to come from a mix of part-time jobs and student loans. Meanwhile, Chloe received her admission package from Westfield, which came with celebratory shopping trips to outfit her dorm in style. During the final months of senior year, I picked up additional shifts at work while keeping my grades high. At graduation, I stepped up to deliver the valedictorian speech and saw Deborah and Michael in the crowd, smiling like they'd played a part in what I'd achieved. After the ceremony, they posed for pictures and told friends how proud they were of both daughters, as if they'd supported us equally along the way. That summer revealed just how different our college transitions would be. Chloe's dorm preparations involved repeated visits to home decor stores, where our parents spared no expense, spending thousands on furnishing supplies and the newest laptop model. I, on the other hand, pieced together my college essentials from second-hand shops and discount bins, selecting only what I could pack into 2 suitcases. The difference couldn't have been more obvious. Chloe was being ushered into young adulthood with every possible advantage. I was simply being let go, expected to navigate it all on my own. When August rolled around and the heat clung to the pavement, I arrived at my tiny dorm room at State University alone. No parents helping to carry boxes or arrange furniture. Just me, 2 worn suitcases, and a long bus ride from the train station. My roommate, Natalie Brooks, glanced over curiously as I unpacked my modest belongings, while her parents busily decorated her half of the dorm room with matching bedding's soft rugs and strings of fairy lights. "Are your parents coming by later?" Natalie asked, arranging a neat row of framed family photos on her desk. "No, they're tied up helping my sister get settled at Westfield today," I replied, smoothing out the wrinkles in my thrifted comforter atop the thin dorm mattress. What I didn't mention was that Deborah and Michael had booked a hotel near Chloe's campus to stay for a few days and help her transition comfortably into college life. That first week laid the foundation for what my entire college experience would look like. While most freshmen wandered around campus making new friends and joining welcome events, I was already clocking in at my job in the university library. My position started immediately 20 hours a week, between shelving books and manning the circulation desk, just enough to scrape together my share of the room and board costs not covered by my scholarship. When classes finally began, I threw myself into them with unwavering determination. Every lecture, every paper, every reading assignment held weight, because every moment in class had a price tag attached, paid through long shifts and looming loan balances. I arranged my course schedule in tight clusters, to work around my job, often sprinting across campus, to get from one obligation to the next. That first weekend in October, I made my usual weekly call home. Deborah answered, her voice bubbling with excitement over Chloe's college updates. She joined a sorority. Can you believe it? We just sent money to cover her membership dues. She gushed, barely pausing to ask about me. And she's thinking about switching from business to communications, Deborah added with amusement. Says it feels more aligned with her personality. When the conversation finally shifted to me, I spoke about my straight-A average and how I was becoming increasingly interested in research methods. Deborah's reply was brief and detached. That's nice, sweetheart. You've always been a strong student. As midterms approached, the pressure only intensified. The campus library announced a reduction in operating hours due to budget cuts, which meant I had to look for extra work. I landed a weekend job at a nearby coffee shop, bumping my total work hours to 25 per week. The new schedule left me running on fumes, barely enough time for rest, let alone the kind of social life that most college students enjoyed. Thanksgiving marked my first trip home since I'd moved into the dorm back in August. Chloe arrived full of animated stories, campus events, late-night parties, new friends. She'd already changed her major once and was considering a second switch. Deborah and Michael listened to her updates with keen interest, asking about her courses, professors, and social circles. When the spotlight eventually turned to me, I mentioned I'd made the dean's list, even while juggling my heavy work schedule. Michael barely paused, distracted as he passed the mashed potatoes. That's our Rachel, always the academic. But the real sting came moments later, when Chloe tore the wrapping off an early Christmas surprise, a brand new laptop, sleek and lightweight. The old one was just too bulky to lug across campus. She explained, her eyes sparkling as she admired the upgrade. It hadn't even been 4 months since Deborah and Michael had bought her the first one. I glanced over at my own laptop, an old refurbished model with a cracked shell, bought with 3 months' worth of grocery store wages during high school. Winter break only emphasized the gap between Chloe and me. She returned from the holidays with new outfits, concert passes, and extra cash for her upcoming semester. I, on the other hand, took on additional hours at my old grocery store job, grateful they still let me work during breaks. But the spring semester brought an unexpected moment of validation. One afternoon, Dr. Evelyn Clark, my instructor for Intro to Research Methods, asked me to remain after class. Rachel, I've been teaching for 2 decades, and it's rare that I come across freshman work of this quality, she said as she returned my research proposal, an A+ clearly marked in red ink. Would you be interested in applying for my research assistant position this fall? It's a paid role and would provide excellent experience. For the first time, someone acknowledged that my strengths went beyond being resourceful. I was being seen as truly gifted. Dr. Clark soon became more than just a professor. She evolved into a mentor who valued my intellect and potential, not just my work ethic. That same semester, my required statistics study group turned into something deeper. A small circle of understanding and solidarity. Jasmine Lee, a journalism student juggling 3 part-time jobs, and Brandon Rivera, a first-generation college student attending on scholarship, quickly became the kind of friends who didn't need my situation explained. They lived it too. One day my parents just said, "We're covering your tuition. That's enough." Brandon admitted one night, while we worked through probability equations, "They just don't get it." "Books, supplies, daily living costs," Brandon said with a shake of his head. Jasmine nodded in agreement. "My parents can't contribute at all. I'm covering everything myself. Some days I honestly question if it's even worth it." "It has to be," I said more firmly than I expected. "We're building something they can never take away from us." By the time spring finals rolled around, the 3 of us had formed a bond that felt unbreakable, carrying one another through late-night cram sessions and sunrise coffee runs. When final grades were released, every one of us made the dean's list, despite working demanding schedules just to stay afloat. During the final week of our freshman year, I called home to share my accomplishments, making the dean's list, being offered Dr. Evelyn Clark's research assistant position, and receiving an email invitation to join the Honors College next fall. "That's great," Rachel Deborah said absent-mindedly. "Hey, can I call you back? We're helping Chloe finalize her summer trip to Europe. Her art history professor told her about this amazing program in Italy, and we want to submit the deposit before it fills up." I ended the call and stared at my phone for a long moment, fully aware, perhaps more clearly than ever, that my academic achievements would never hold the same weight as Chloe's simplest desires in the eyes of our parents. The imbalance that had quietly shaped our childhood was only becoming more visible in college. Still, instead of letting it break me, I leaned into the summer ahead with quiet resolve. While Chloe wandered through Italian museums, funded by Deborah and Michael, I stayed on campus thanks to a research stipend arranged by Dr. Clark, using the time to dive into next year's projects and get a head start on what I was building for myself. The path I was paving might not have had the shine of Chloe's European getaway, but it was mine, built through determination and effort, not privilege. As sophomore year began, I felt a renewed sense of drive I hadn't experienced before. My research assistantship under Dr. Evelyn Clark not only provided steady income, but also invaluable hands-on experience in data analysis for her ongoing study on information literacy. The role even came with an unexpected perk, a small, quiet office in the research wing, where I could study between classes and job shifts. Around that time, Brandon mentioned hearing about a highly competitive internship at the state's Department of Education. "You should go for it," he encouraged over a noisy lunch in the student cafeteria. "They're looking for someone with solid research skills. That's literally your entire life right now." "I think those spots are usually reserved for upperclassmen," I replied hesitantly. "Just apply," Jasmine added, chiming in with her usual optimism. "The worst they can do is say no." Despite my doubts, I submitted my application, complete with a glowing recommendation from Dr. Clark. 2 weeks and 3 interviews later, I got the call I was the first sophomore ever offered the role. The part-time position fit seamlessly alongside my research assistantship and opened up exciting possibilities for my future career. When Thanksgiving break arrived, I came home with real accomplishments I was proud to share. Surely now, I thought Deborah and Michael would see that I was building something meaningful. But as we sat around the dinner table, the familiar pattern reemerged. Chloe held the floor animatedly recounting her semester abroad in Barcelona, a program funded entirely by our parents, after she'd lost interest in her classes at Westfield. The Spanish lifestyle just resonates with me." She sighed as if she'd discovered some deep cosmic truth. "I'm considering changing my major to international studies," Chloe announced. It would be her third change in less than 2 years. Each switch pushed her graduation date further out, but Deborah and Michael continued to cover every added cost without hesitation or question. When the attention finally shifted to me, I shared that I had secured both an internship and a research assistant role. "Oh, that's lovely," Deborah replied, her voice carrying the same patronizing tone one might use to compliment a child's finger painting. "Is it paying enough? Are you able to handle your expenses?" There were no congratulations, no spark of pride, just immediate concern over whether I could keep myself financially afloat. I added almost shyly that an article I'd written had just been accepted for publication in the university's undergraduate research journal, hoping that might earn some genuine acknowledgement. Michael simply nodded. "Still, the bookworm, huh? Don't forget to enjoy college while you can, Rachel. It's supposed to be fun, too." That night, I overheard them speaking in hushed tones about Chloe's latest request, to move into an off-campus apartment for her junior year. "The dorms are just too loud," Michael said. "If we really want her to succeed, we need to help her find a quieter place to live." The weight of those words hit hard. The irony was almost unbearable, considering I maintained a flawless GPA while holding down multiple jobs and living in shared student housing without a single complaint. Junior year came with new hardships of its own. On my way back to campus after winter break, the old car gifted to me by my grandmother for high school graduation broke down on the side of the highway. The repair costs were more than the car was worth. During our next phone call, I asked Deborah and Michael if they could help me with a small loan to replace it. "Just something to get me through until summer," I explained. "I can take on more hours at work to repay you." The heavy silence that followed my request told me everything I needed to know. "We're really financially stretched right now," Rachel Michael finally responded. Chloe's apartment deposit was a big expense, and we just covered her summer school tuition after she withdrew from her spring courses. "I get it," I replied automatically, though in truth I didn't. Not fully. Losing my car meant I now had to rely entirely on the unreliable campus shuttle system. The carefully balanced schedule I had built around classes and multiple jobs now had to accommodate long, inconsistent bus rides, cutting further into what little time I had for studying or rest. Some nights, I'd finish my shift at the library, only to realize the last bus had already left, forcing me to walk half an hour home through dark, empty streets. Later that semester, a sudden dental issue drained the last of my emergency savings. Years of high stress, skipped meals, and poor nutrition had caught up to me, resulting in 2 painful cavities that required immediate treatment. Without dental insurance, the cost hit me like a punch to the stomach. Yet despite everything, I continued to excel academically. Dr. Evelyn Clark listed me as second author on a research paper that was accepted by a respected academic journal. My role at the Department of Education evolved into a more advanced position with additional responsibilities. And the Honors College invited me to serve as a mentor for first-year students. These professional milestones stood in stark contrast to my personal life, which often felt like a daily survival exercise. I shared a cramped apartment with 3 other working students chosen purely for cost savings. My meals mostly consisted of instant noodles and whatever was cheapest at the grocery store that week. My wardrobe hadn't changed since high school, aside from a few thrift store finds added only when absolutely necessary. From the brief, increasingly rare phone conversations I had with my family, it seemed Chloe's junior year was moving in a completely different direction. Her fully paid-off campus apartment came furnished with brand new pieces, courtesy of Deborah and Michael. Her third change in major had recently been approved, resetting several credits, and likely extending her time at the university by an extra year. She'd also signed up for a pricey private fitness club, claiming the school gym didn't match her energy. That was yet another expense our parents covered without hesitation. Spring break during junior year became the moment when I could no longer stomach the inequality. My plan was simple: spend the week buried in research and make headway on my thesis draft. But a phone call from Deborah quickly upended that. "We've decided to take a trip to Cabo San Lucas for spring break," she announced, her tone upbeat and breezy. "Chloe's been working so hard, and we thought a family vacation would be a great idea." I swallowed hard. "That's pretty last minute. When are you leaving?" "Next week. We just finished booking everything," she said excitedly. "Think you could get the time off work?" That question alone made it clear how little they grasped my daily life. Taking a week off would mean giving up crucial income I absolutely relied on. And the idea of buying a last-minute international flight, completely out of reach, besides their idea of working hard, clearly meant something very different when it came to Chloe. "I can't take time off or afford a plane ticket," I explained plainly. "But I hope you all have a great trip." There was a pause before Deborah responded, sounding genuinely caught off guard. "Well, maybe we could help cover the flight, if that's what's holding you back." That kind of selective generosity hurt more than silence ever could. They could throw money at a spontaneous international getaway, but just a few weeks earlier, they told me they couldn't spare anything for a basic car loan. "That's okay," I said, trying to keep my voice, even though it was tight with frustration. "I've got research deadlines anyway." That was my quiet response. While my family flooded the group chat with sunlit beach photos from Mexico, I picked up additional shifts at the campus library just to manage an unexpected hike in rent. The difference between our worlds couldn't have been more stark. Chloe's version of burnout led to an international escape. Mine was treated as routine, simply part of who I was expected to be. As senior year drew near, I felt both hopeful and deeply uneasy. Academically, I had laid a strong foundation for either graduate school or a promising career. But the financial tightrope I'd been walking for 3 years was now worn dangerously thin. The weight of looming student debt pressed harder with each month. My work schedule had no room left for adjustment, and the emotional wound left by years of imbalance in my family's treatment refused to fully close, no matter how much I accomplished. When the final year officially began, it came with a strange blend of anticipation and heaviness. On paper, everything was aligning. Dr. Evelyn Clark had nominated me for the department's top honor, the Award for Outstanding Research Contribution. My internship at the state's Department of Education had transitioned into a paid fellowship with more flexibility. Graduate programs had begun reaching out interested in my published work, my perfect GPA, and my ability to maintain both while working nearly full-time. But beneath those external successes, the cracks within my family relationships were widening with every passing week. It all began with what appeared to be a harmless group message sent in early September. Planning Chloe's graduation celebration in May, thinking of booking the lake house for the weekend. Save the dates. May 15th to 17th, Deborah wrote in the family group chat. I stared at my phone, a chill settling in my chest. My own graduation ceremony was scheduled for May 16th, and yet no one had asked about my plans. No mention had been made of acknowledging or celebrating my achievement. My graduation is on the 16th, I replied in a brief text. 3 hours passed before Michael responded. "Oh, is that the same weekend? Let me double-check Chloe's schedule." The next day, a follow-up message came. "Confirmed Chloe's ceremony is at 10 a.m. on Saturday the 16th. Is yours later. Maybe we can attend both." That maybe landed like a final judgment. 4 years of unequal treatment, condensed into one hesitant word. A word that made it painfully clear which milestone carried more weight in their eyes. Mine's at 2 p.m. I wrote, then placed my phone face down and turned it off. October arrived, bringing with it midterms, and surprisingly, a dinner invitation from my parents. They were visiting Chloe for her university's parents' weekend, and suggested we meet halfway for a meal. It was curiosity more than hope that led me to say yes. The restaurant they chose was upscale, far beyond anything I could afford on my tight budget. Chloe showed up in designer clothes, freshly styled hair, and the usual glow of someone fully supported. Deborah and Michael lit up when they saw her beaming proudly as we sat down. I braced myself for what had become a familiar routine. Then over appetizers came the announcement. "We have some exciting news," Deborah said, reaching over to squeeze Michael's hand. "We've put down a deposit for Chloe's graduation, present a brand new car. The dealership is holding a red Audi A3 for her. It's the exact model she's always wanted." The moment froze as memories surged to the surface me sophomore year, asking for help with textbook costs, and being told there wasn't room in the budget. The dental work I was still slowly paying off month by month. The endless rainy days spent waiting for late buses after my car broke down, and no one offered help. "That's a pretty generous gift," I said, my voice calmer than the storm building inside me. "Well, she's worked really hard," Michael replied, "and she'll need a dependable car for job interviews." I swallowed the obvious comeback. Hadn't I put in just as much effort? Wouldn't I also need transportation as I stepped into the next chapter of my life? Before I could say anything, Chloe jumped in. "I'm actually thinking of taking a gap year before starting work," she said casually. "Maybe travel through Southeast Asia, figure things out before I settle down." Deborah and Michael nodded along, as though this decision was perfectly logical. Just another fully funded adventure approved without hesitation. Then Michael turned to me as if suddenly remembering I was also graduating. "So Rachel, what are your plans after school?" he asked. "I've been offered 3 job positions," I said, keeping my tone even. "And I've also been accepted into graduate programs at Columbia and Stanford, both with scholarships." Still deciding. "Always the academic," Deborah remarked, with that same tired, almost dismissive tone I knew too well. "Just don't bury yourself so deep in work that you forget to enjoy life a little." The irony hit like a punch. All my achievements earned through sacrifice and persistence were dismissed as overachieving. Meanwhile, Chloe's aimless drifting paid for by others was praised as worthy and bold. Then came November, and with it the final confirmation that I'd be celebrating graduation alone. The text arrived one Tuesday evening while I was finishing up a late shift at the library. "Sweetheart, we looked at the calendar, and unfortunately we can't attend both ceremonies. The lake house is already booked, and Chloe's graduation is earlier in the day, so we'll be going to hers. I'm sure you understand. You've always been so self-sufficient. Maybe we can grab dinner the weekend after to celebrate." I read the message once, then again, before quietly locking my phone without replying. What could I even say? After 4 years of relentless effort and personal sacrifice, they still couldn't find it in themselves to show up for a 2-hour ceremony. The message came through loud and clear. Chloe's average performance in a fully funded college experience meant more than my magna cum laude graduation, earned entirely through my own determination. That night, alone in my apartment, the weight finally crushed me. The dam broke. I cried into my pillow, releasing years of buried pain, disappointment, and quiet resentment. My roommates were gone for the evening, a small mercy that gave me the space to fall apart without an audience. When the sobs finally eased, I picked up the phone and called the one person who had never questioned my value, Jasmine. "They're not coming to my graduation," I said as soon as she answered. "Unbelievable," she snapped. "Tell me everything." So I did. I unloaded the entire story, how they bought Chloe a car, booked the lake house, and treated my own ceremony like an afterthought. When I finished, Jasmine was quiet for a moment before she said, "Rachel, listen to me. Their inability to recognize your worth doesn't make it any less real. Just because they're blind to your brilliance doesn't mean it doesn't exist." "It shouldn't still hurt this much," I whispered. "Of course it hurts. They're your parents. But look at what you've accomplished on your own. You've earned every single bit of it, and no one can take that from you." After we hung up, I sat at my small desk, staring out at the street below. Students walked by, laughing and carefree, most of them unaware of what it truly meant to go it alone. For the first time, I let something else into that quiet space alongside the grief: pride. This wasn't the guarded pride I had carried like armor for years. It was real, heartfelt pride in everything I'd managed to accomplish despite the overwhelming odds. That night, I made up my mind I would walk across that graduation stage alone, but with my head held high. My success didn't need validation from others, and whatever came after would be built entirely on my own foundation, no longer hoping for support that had never been there in the first place. December arrived with final exams and an unexpected email from the office of the Dean of Students, asking to schedule a meeting. Worried it might be about my financial aid or graduation eligibility, I shuffled my work shifts to make time. Rachel Morgan. Dr. Marlene Whitman greeted me warmly as I stepped into her office. "Please sit down. I've been meaning to meet you." Uncertain. I took the seat across from her desk. "Is there something wrong with my graduation paperwork?" "Not at all," she said with a smile. "In fact, it's quite the opposite. Your name has been nominated for a special honor at commencement. Before we make it official, I wanted to speak with you directly." I must have looked completely baffled because she continued gently. "Each year, the university selects one graduating senior to receive the Chancellor's Award for Excellence and Perseverance. It's our most prestigious recognition, reserved for a student who demonstrates outstanding academic success while overcoming significant obstacles." "I didn't apply for any awards," I said quietly. "You were nominated by multiple faculty members," she explained. "The nomination was led by Dr. Evelyn Clark. Your journey has inspired many here, Rachel, holding down multiple jobs, maintaining a flawless GPA, publishing research as an undergraduate, all without the financial backing most students take for granted." She paused. The selection committee had reached a unanimous decision in choosing me. The affirmation I had longed for from my own family was now coming from the university community instead. The irony wasn't lost on me. "There's something else," Dr. Marlene Whitman continued. "This award also includes a financial grant, typically used by recipients, to help fund graduate studies or pay off student loans. But this year, an anonymous benefactor has generously matched the amount to create a scholarship in your name for future students who are financially independent like yourself." My eyes stung, but I kept my composure. "Thank you. I wasn't expecting this. We'll make the announcement at commencement," she added kindly. I assume your family will be in attendance." Her tone was gentle, but the question hit its mark. "Actually, no," I replied. "They'll be at my sister Chloe's graduation instead. It's scheduled for the same day." A brief expression passed over Dr. Whitman's face. Maybe sympathy, or maybe acknowledgement of what the letters of nomination must have detailed. "Well, I'm especially pleased you'll have this moment of recognition," she said softly. "You've more than earned it, Rachel, many times over." As May drew near, I found myself preparing for the most meaningful academic milestone of my life, with no one to share it. Jasmine and Brandon would be attending their own departmental ceremonies. Dr. Evelyn Clark would be seated on stage with the rest of the faculty. And I, like always, would walk that stage alone, just as I had throughout my years in college. The night before commencement, I carefully ironed my one professional outfit and shined the only pair of formal shoes I owned. I laid out my honor cords, the academic stole I'd earned, and my bus pass for the morning. Everything was in order, except my heart, which still ached for the kind of support it had never known. As I was getting ready for bed, a message popped up on my phone. It was from Deborah Morgan. "We're so proud of you, Rachel. We might try to catch your ceremony after Chloe's if traffic isn't too bad. Love you." The message tossed in like an afterthought, stung more than if they'd said nothing at all. I put my phone down without answering and crawled into bed repeating to myself that tomorrow wasn't about who would be in the audience. It was about what I had achieved despite everything I had to fight through to get here. The morning of graduation broke bright and clear sunlight filtering through the blinds in my apartment, like nature itself was giving its blessing. I got up early and took extra time to look presentable. The suit I'd picked up from a second-hand boutique for job interviews fit well enough, and I had treated myself to a blowout at the nearby beauty school the night before. They were small indulgences, but they carried weight, hard-won moments of dignity. After years of living on the edge, the campus bus was packed mostly with families headed to different ceremonies. I found a spot between a glowing grandmother holding a bouquet and two parents fiddling with their camera settings. Their joy was unmistakable, and it cast my own aloneness in sharp relief. Still, I wasn't about to let it take away from what this day meant to me. The university grounds had been transformed into a celebration. Colorful banners waved from every lamppost, congratulating the graduating class. Lines were already forming at photo booths, bearing the school's emblem. All around me, students in gowns and mortarboards were hugging parents, posing for photos and soaking in the moment. I picked up my rented academic regalia from the distribution center, then slipped into a restroom to put it on carefully, piece by piece. The black graduation robe honor cords and cap outwardly reflected what I had already become on the inside, a graduate who had earned every piece of it through determination and grit. "Rachel, there you are." Dr. Evelyn Clark's voice rose above the noise of the gathering crowd. She made her way toward me, radiant in her own academic regalia. "I've been searching for you everywhere." "I just arrived," I replied, adjusting my cap nervously. She paused, looking at me with that familiar perceptive gaze. "No family yet?" I shook my head. "They're at Chloe's ceremony. They might drop by later, but I'm not expecting it." Her face softened with sympathy. "Well, I'm here, and I couldn't be prouder of you. Do you have a few minutes before we line up? There's something I've been meaning to talk to you about." We found a quiet spot in the nearly deserted student center, while most others were outside, enjoying the spring sunshine and celebratory buzz. "You've heard about the Chancellor's Award, right?" she asked. I nodded. "Dr. Marlene Whitman told me. I still can't believe it." "Believe it," she said firmly. No one deserves it more. She took a slow sip of her coffee before continuing. What Dr. Whitman may not have emphasized is just how meaningful this award really is. It's not just a ceremonial title, it's a formal acknowledgement of your extraordinary achievements. The university president himself will read your commendation aloud. Your story will be shared with everyone attending. A twist of anxiety tightened in my stomach. My story, not the personal stuff. She quickly reassured me. Only the facts that you supported yourself all the way through college, kept a flawless GPA, contributed to published academic work, and secured top-tier graduate school offers. The idea of having my background shared with thousands of strangers made me uneasy. I'd spent years keeping my financial hardships and strained family relationships to myself. I recognized that expression. Dr. Evelyn Clark said softly, "You're afraid of being exposed or embarrassed. But Rachel, what you've accomplished is nothing to shrink from, it's something to honor. You've become a beacon for every student who's been fighting to succeed without a safety net." Her words reframed something deep within me. Maybe my past wasn't just a string of private battles, but living proof of what unwavering resolve could achieve. "And there's more," she added. "Several department heads and university donors have personally requested to meet you at the reception. Your name has traveled beyond our department walls. These introductions could be game-changing for your future. For years, my focus had been survival, earning just enough to get by preserving my GPA, keeping the scholarships intact. It hadn't occurred to me that my uphill battle might actually be opening doors to a far brighter future. Thank you," I said quietly, "for everything, for believing in me when even my own family couldn't." Dr. Clark reached across the table and gave my hand a gentle squeeze. "You didn't just show up, Rachel. You made yourself impossible to ignore. That's your real power." We said goodbye about an hour before the ceremony. She left to join the faculty procession, and I made my way to the graduate lineup. The university quad had morphed into organized chaos students in flowing black gowns, searching for their assigned sections by college and field of study. As I found my place, my phone buzzed with a message from Deborah Morgan. "Chloe's ceremony is running long. Probably won't make it to yours. Please take some pictures. So proud of you." The disappointment arrived on cue, but this time it felt muted, distant, as if it belonged to a younger version of myself still craving approval. Today wasn't defined by who didn't show up. It was about the fact that I had, despite it all, despite them. And I was standing exactly where I deserved to be. As the ceremonial music began, our line of graduates moved steadily into the main auditorium, where thousands of relatives and friends waited with eager anticipation. Out of instinct, more than expectation, I glanced briefly into the crowd. As I had anticipated, there were no recognizable faces among the sea of excited onlookers. Once we were seated, I listened as the university president welcomed the attendees and reflected on the significance of this milestone, crossing the threshold from student life into the world beyond academia. Distinguished graduates from past years shared encouraging words, and then each dean stepped forward to recognize the students from their respective colleges. Eventually, the ceremony shifted to the special honors segment. My pulse quickened as the president returned to the lectern. Each year, he began, "Our institution confers its most prestigious honor, the Chancellor's Award for Excellence and Perseverance, to a graduating senior who has demonstrated remarkable achievement while overcoming formidable obstacles." He continued, "This year's honoree upheld a flawless 4.0 GPA while juggling multiple jobs to completely self-fund her education. She conducted and published academic research, while still an undergraduate earned competitive fellowships and received offers from top-tier graduate schools with full scholarships. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my great privilege to present the Chancellor's Award to Rachel Morgan. The auditorium erupted in applause as I stood and made my way to the stage, hyper-aware of each step and every breath. The experience felt dreamlike, as though I were watching it unfold for someone else. The president shook my hand and handed me a crystal award, etched with my name along with a formal certificate. Ms. Morgan will now say a few words, he announced, motioning toward the podium. I hadn't written anything in advance, never imagining I would be speaking. But as I looked across the crowd, the words seemed to form on their own. Thank you for this incredible recognition, I began. My time here has taught me that education is truly valuable, because it demands everything of you. And sometimes, everything you give becomes everything you are. Every lecture I attended, every project I submitted, every dawn wake-up and late-night study session was a deliberate decision to invest in myself, especially when easier roads existed. To any student feeling overwhelmed by barriers that seem impossible to climb, I want you to hear this. Your hardships don't diminish your worth. They sharpen your strength. I paused for a moment, noticing movement near the back of the arena. Probably just late arrivals finding seats, I thought, and pressed on. I'm deeply thankful for the professors who recognized my potential and challenged me to rise to it, especially Dr. Evelyn Clark, who exemplified what true academic mentorship looks like. I'm grateful for the friends who stepped into the role of family when my own relatives chose to stay absent. And I'm thankful to this university for fostering a space where perseverance can outshine privilege. The university president then stepped up once more. In addition to this award, he announced I am honored to share the creation of the Rachel Morgan Perseverance Scholarship, which will provide support for future students who, like Ms. Morgan, are independently funding their education. Her story of resilience will now pave the way for others to follow. As I made my way back to my seat, the applause still echoing through the arena, I spotted 3 people being quietly directed to open seats near the aisle: Deborah Michael and Chloe Morgan. Their faces were a mix of disbelief and stunned realization as they looked from me to the podium and back again, visibly struggling to process what they had just walked into. They hadn't planned on arriving in time to witness this moment, and they certainly hadn't expected to watch their overlooked daughter being publicly honored while they fumbled into the room as afterthoughts. Our eyes met for a fleeting moment. In Deborah and Michael Morgan's faces, I caught a flicker of bewilderment, mixed with something deeper. Maybe it was the first real acknowledgement that they had truly underestimated me all this time. Chloe's reaction was easier to decipher, clear shock tinged with unmistakable envy. I turned my attention back to the ceremony unfolding around me. Whether they were present or not, no longer had the power to define this day. I had created something on my own, something they could neither claim credit for nor diminish in any way. And for the first time, I felt completely unburdened by the need for their recognition. The rest of the event moved past in a haze of emotions. When my name was called once more to receive my diploma, I could feel the applause stretch just a little longer than it had for others. As I walked across the stage, I caught Dr. Evelyn Clark's face among the seated faculty radiating pride. After the ceremony ended and graduates began reuniting with their loved ones, I headed alone toward the department reception, the engraved crystal tucked securely in my bag. I had just enough time to attend briefly, thank my professors, and leave before my evening library shift. I didn't anticipate being stopped by my family near the campus reflecting pool. Rachel Deborah called out, waving frantically. Wait. I stopped watching them rush over, still clearly trying to process everything they'd just witnessed. Why didn't you tell us about the award? Michael asked, skipping any greeting. We would have made sure to come from the start. The old version of me might have said sorry, might have downplayed the moment to ease their awkwardness. But the woman I'd grown into answered plainly. I didn't think it would make a difference. Chloe's graduation and party were always the priority. That's not fair, Chloe chimed in quickly. We didn't even know you were getting some big award. And if you had, I replied softly. Would that have changed anything? 4 years of straight A's working 2 jobs, publishing research? And none of that was enough to catch your attention. Why would this be? My parents exchanged an uneasy glance, the weight of truth beginning to settle. We're very proud of you, Deborah said, reaching out for a hug. But I didn't move. I simply stood still, because for the first time in my life, I didn't need it. And that was enough. This just caught us off guard. It really shouldn't have, I responded evenly. Nothing I accomplished today happened overnight. I've been excelling for years, while your attention was directed elsewhere. Michael Morgan shifted, clearly uncomfortable. Look, we came to support you. We're here now. Let's not spoil this with blame. I'm not blaming anyone. I replied, my tone steady. I'm simply stating what's true. And while I do appreciate that you made it for the last few minutes, I have other obligations now. There are people waiting for me. We were hoping to take you out for dinner. Deborah added, her voice faltering, when I didn't mirror her enthusiasm. The reservation's not until 7, but we could see if they'll seat us earlier. I thought about the department reception, where Dr. Evelyn Clark and others were expecting me, and about the friends who had shown up for me day after day, not just when it was convenient. I can't, I said. I already have plans with the people who've been by my side from the beginning. I nodded in the direction of the academic halls. But thank you for offering. Rachel, my father began again, but I raised my hand gently to stop him. Today isn't about helping you feel better about your decisions. It's about honoring what I've achieved, in spite of them. I hope you enjoyed the ceremony. I'm sure I'll see you before you head back. And with that, I turned and walked away toward the reception, where people who truly saw and valued me were waiting. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel responsible for managing their disappointment or softening my truth for their comfort. The freedom felt just as sweet as the award I carried in my bag. The department reception was already humming with laughter and conversations as I stepped into the grand old lecture hall, now transformed with white tablecloths, gentle lighting, and elegant centerpieces. Faculty members in their formal academic attire mingled with graduates and their families holding glasses of champagne and small appetizers. I hesitated at the entrance, suddenly aware that I was alone, while groups of families dominated the space around me. Rachel over here. Dr. Evelyn Clark waved from across the room, standing with the department chair, and a few well-dressed older individuals I didn't recognize. As I made my way through the crowd, I could feel eyes on me. Whispers of "That's her" and Chancellor's award floated behind me. The attention was foreign, considering the years I had spent working quietly in the background. There she is. Dr. Clark smiled brightly as I joined their circle. Rachel, I'd like you to meet Dr. Alan Graves and these distinguished alumni who are eager to hear about your work. The next hour flew by in a blur of introductions, questions about my research, and talks about my future goals. These strangers seemed more genuinely interested in my academic journey than my family ever had over the past 4 years. A prominent alumna who ran a major research foundation handed me her business card and encouraged me to call about summer opportunities. The dean of graduate studies mentioned scholarship options that I hadn't even known existed. "You've certainly left an impression," Dr. Clark said softly, as we had a quiet moment by the refreshment table. "That was Catherine Monroe, who gave you her card. Her foundation funds some of the most groundbreaking research in our field. I never saw any of this coming," I admitted, feeling overwhelmed by the sudden influx of opportunities. "Better start getting used to it," Dr. Evelyn Clark said with a smile. "True excellence has a way of drawing attention, especially when it's earned through adversity." As the reception carried on, I noticed other students surrounded by their enthusiastic families. On another day, that scene might have stirred up the usual ache of being overlooked. But today, surrounded by faculty mentors and professional contacts who genuinely appreciated my accomplishments, the absence of my own family didn't sting quite as sharply. Just as the event was starting to wrap up, Dr. Clark lightly tapped my arm. "There's someone else who's been asking to meet you, the benefactor who made your scholarship possible." She led me to a quieter area of the hall, where a poised older woman was waiting. "Rachel, this is Dr. Lorraine Whitfield, class of '78, she introduced warmly. "Dr. Whitfield, meet our Chancellor's Award recipient, Rachel Morgan." The woman offered her hand with a gentle smile. "It's truly a pleasure to meet you at last, Rachel. I've followed your story with great interest." "Thank you for your kindness," I replied, taking her hand. "This scholarship has had a profound impact, not just for me, but for others in my position. That's exactly why I created it," she said, motioning toward a pair of chairs nearby. "Do you have a moment to sit down?" As Dr. Clark stepped away, Dr. Whitfield and I took our seats. "I was in your shoes nearly 5 decades ago," she said, diving in without hesitation. "I worked 3 jobs to stay in school, while watching my younger brother benefit from every opportunity. Though the specifics were different, her experience mirrored my own in striking ways." "How did you manage all of that?" I asked. She gave a soft, reflective laugh. "Not with the kind of grace you've shown. I was bitter for a long time, angry, frustrated. It took many years of therapy to realize the imbalance wasn't about me. It was about what my parents couldn't offer: vision, fairness, and the ability to see past their own expectations. Did they ever come to terms with what they had done?" The question slipped out before I could stop it sounding more vulnerable than I intended. Dr. Lorraine Whitfield gave a thoughtful nod. "In time, after I had already built my career and no longer needed their validation. My accomplishments became too significant to downplay, too real to write off as simple diligence or good fortune." She paused. By then, I had created a life completely shaped by my own choices. She looked at me with a quiet kind of recognition. "Your parents came today. I saw them arrive just as you were receiving your award." I gave a slight nod, unable to find the right words. She continued gently. "Watching you being honored in front of everyone, that must have been something for them to witness. It was disorienting. For all of us," I admitted. "They looked surprised, maybe even a bit ashamed. Honestly, I'm still trying to make sense of how I feel about it." Dr. Whitfield leaned in slightly, her tone steady. "This is where it begins. That moment on stage, your recognition has disrupted the version of reality they've clung to. They can't pretend anymore that your success is simply expected while Chloe's deserves applause." Her words landed deep, so accurate they almost stung. "What happens now?" I asked. "That depends," she said with a calm certainty. Some parents grow. They admit their failures. Others, they entrench themselves even more deeply. But either way, your direction doesn't change. Keep building your future. Keep choosing your life. She reached into her purse and handed me a crisp business card, indistinguishable from the others I had collected that day. Except this one felt different. My foundation is committed to educational equity, she explained. We're always seeking individuals who speak from personal experience. When you're ready, I'd like to explore how your story might fit into the work we do. As she stood to go, Dr. Whitfield offered one last thought. Remember this, Rachel. The most powerful answer to injustice isn't bitterness. It's becoming undeniable. It's rare to see success shine so brightly alongside true contentment. But you, Rachel, are well on your way to both. Her words echoed in my thoughts as I left the reception and wandered across campus. The library had kindly given me the evening off as a graduation gift, leaving my schedule unexpectedly open. Instead of heading back to my quiet apartment, I felt drawn to the Central Plaza, the same place where the main ceremony had unfolded earlier that day. Now the grand space stood almost empty. Cleanup crews gathered stray programs, while workers slowly disassembled the stage. I sat on a nearby bench, letting the silence settle around me as I replayed the events of the day, and Dr. Lorraine Whitfield's insights. Then came the soft sound of footsteps approaching. When I looked up, I saw my family approaching hesitantly, as if unsure of their welcome. Michael Morgan had his hands shoved in his pockets. "We figured you might be here," he said with a faint smile. "You always liked quiet places to clear your head." That surprised me. I didn't realize he had ever noticed such things about me. "We were wondering if you'd still want to join us for that dinner," Deborah Morgan added. "Our reservation's not for another hour." I looked at them carefully, trying to figure out what to say. Chloe stood a bit behind her face, hard to read. "Why now?" I asked at last. What shifted between this morning when my graduation barely seemed worth showing up for, and tonight? My question landed heavily. They glanced at each other before Michael responded. "Watching you up on that stage, being recognized like that, it made us realize we may have misunderstood some things. May have, the words slipped out before I could stop them. We did," Deborah corrected herself quickly. "We overlooked your accomplishments while channeling so much of our energy into supporting Chloe. We truly believed we were doing what was best for both of you, based on what we thought each of you needed. But we never asked you what you needed," Michael added quietly. "We assumed you were fine, that you didn't need anything." Their admission should have felt like justice, but instead, it revealed just how deeply they had misread who I was. My strength wasn't something I was born with. It had been a necessity, forged from their absence. I did need things, I said softly. Yes, financial help, but even more than that. I needed to feel seen, to be acknowledged, to know that everything I sacrificed meant something to you. Just like Chloe's challenges always seemed to. Then something unexpected happened. Chloe stepped forward, her voice gentle. I didn't realize how unfair it all was. She said, her eyes full of regret. "I've been so wrapped up in my own problems. I never stopped to ask why you always had less. I'm sorry, Rachel." Chloe's apology felt more sincere than anything I'd heard from Deborah or Michael. Maybe because she benefited from the imbalance, rather than orchestrating it. "Thank you," I said, meeting her gaze. "That actually means a lot." A quiet tension lingered in the air until Deborah tried once more. "Would you still consider coming to dinner? We'd love to hear more about your awards. And what's next for you? I paused, genuinely considering it, torn between old wounds and the possibility of something new. But the timing didn't feel right. Their interest felt too sudden, as if it needed to prove itself through more than one gesture. "I appreciate the offer," I replied, keeping my voice calm. "But I already have plans tonight with friends who've supported me from the beginning. People who believed in me long before there was any trophy or title attached to my name." I could see the disappointment on their faces, but I didn't stop there. "I'm not saying no forever," I added gently. "Just not tonight. This isn't something that can be undone over one meal, after years of being overlooked." Michael looked at me seriously. "What do you need from us?" The simplicity of the question struck me maybe for the first time. He truly wanted to understand. "Time," I answered quietly. "And consistency. If you're genuinely interested in being part of my life, now show me. Not just today, not just when there's an audience, but every day in small, honest ways." They both nodded slowly, as if realizing a line had been drawn that wouldn't easily be moved. "We are proud of you," Deborah said this time, sounding far more heartfelt than the brief message she'd sent earlier that afternoon. "Really proud. And we'd like the chance to do better." "I'd like that too," I said softly. "But it'll take more than promises." As they turned to go, Chloe lingered behind for a few seconds. And then she said something I didn't expect. "For what it's worth, watching you up there today, it was incredible. You deserved every second of it." Her words, maybe the first genuine praise she'd ever directed at me, landed gently without fanfare. "Thank you, Chloe," I said softly. As I watched them walk away, I wasn't overwhelmed by victory or resentment. Instead, I felt something deeper. A quiet shift. It was the moment I truly began separating my sense of worth from their ability or inability to recognize it. Even if they never fully admitted the uneven playing field they helped create, I finally understood. My value wasn't dependent on their acknowledgement. It never was. Just then, my phone lit up with a message from Jasmine Lee Riverside Cafe in 30. "Celebration. Brandon, Natalie, everyone's going. You better show up, Chancellor's award champ." I laughed quietly, tucking the phone away, as I glanced back at the nearly vacant graduation plaza. No matter what was ahead, graduate school, a new job, maybe a chance at healing with Deborah and Michael, or maybe more space, I'd face it with my head high, on my own terms, and surrounded by people who saw my worth long before there was a trophy to prove it. As I made my way toward the main exit, the sun dipped low across the quad, casting long amber shadows, a fitting symbol for a day that marked both a closing chapter and the start of something new. When I reached the bus stop, it was empty. The posted schedule said 20 minutes to the next route downtown. I pulled out my phone and opened the rideshare app when I usually avoided to save money. But today called for a small indulgence. Because I had somewhere to be, and people waiting who had chosen me not out of obligation, but because they believed in me all along. 6 months later, the city had turned gold with autumn light, and I had settled into a new rhythm. The job offer I'd taken placed me just blocks from the state education office, where I had interned the year before. It wasn't just a new chapter. It was mine, completely, unapologetically mine. Though it was technically an entry-level salary, it felt like a fortune after scraping by through years of student living. Having a place of my own, even if it was just a small, modest apartment, felt like a quiet form of luxury I had never known during college. My professional journey had begun, with a speed I hadn't expected. Connections I'd made through Dr. Evelyn Clark and other supportive mentors had opened doors that were typically locked to recent grads. Dr. Lorraine Whitfield's foundation, even invited me to join their Young Professionals Advisory Board, a chance to grow my network, gain valuable experience, and earn a small stipend to supplement my income. Sometimes the difference between my current stability and the tightrope walk of my college years felt almost dreamlike. No more juggling back-to-back shifts. No more choosing between textbooks and a full fridge. That constant hum of financial anxiety had softened, not entirely gone, but distant enough to breathe. Some of the survival habits still lingered, but my footing felt surer now. As for my family, our relationship was still layered with tension, but small shifts had started to emerge. To their credit, Deborah and Michael had followed through, at least in part, on the promises they made on graduation day. They now sent the occasional message, asking how work was going. They remembered my birthday with something tangible, not just a brief call. Small gestures. But they didn't go unnoticed. Chloe and I had begun to rebuild something separate from the dynamics that shaped us. We met once a month for coffee, navigating this new chapter as equals, not rivals, clawing for space in our parents' approval. Her post-college adventures had been cut short when Deborah and Michael finally put limits on their financial support. "I'm job hunting now," she told me during our last meetup. "Mom and Dad still cover the rent, but the rest is on me now." Hearing her say it brought on a swirl of feelings. Part of me felt justified that finally some accountability was being asked of her, but I also felt a twinge of empathy. Shifting into self-reliance after years of full support isn't easy. "It's a lot to manage at first," I'd said quietly. "But you adjusted quicker than I imagined," Chloe had said, a sincere curiosity lighting up her face. "How did you manage it all? The jobs, the grades, the pressure?" I had smiled, remembering. "One step at a time," I replied, "because I had no other choice. When life demands more of you, you learn to rise because you must." These conversations with Chloe felt like the first steps towards something new, a relationship rooted in mutual understanding instead of the rigid roles we'd been assigned in childhood. Whether it would eventually lead to real closeness, I couldn't be sure yet. But for the first time, the door to that possibility wasn't locked. With Deborah and Michael, the changes came more slowly. Decades of ingrained habits don't unravel in a few months. Still, their first visit to my new apartment had revealed some effort. They'd arrived with welcome gifts and an enthusiasm that felt just slightly too rehearsed, like they were trying hard to appear comfortable in my self-made world. But familiar patterns resurfaced almost immediately. Comments about when I'd pursue something more impressive decor advice that reflected their preferences, not mine. "We're so impressed by how you've managed to get on your feet," Michael said, while surveying my humble living room. "Of course, we always knew you'd make it." That last part hit a nerve, the subtle implication that none of it had required struggle, that my success was simply inevitable. But this time, I found my voice. "I didn't end up on my feet by chance," I said steadily. "This life didn't fall into place, it was built. One decision, one sacrifice at a time. None of it was easy. None of it was guaranteed." For a second, I saw discomfort flicker across Michael's face. But then came a shift, quiet and sincere. "You're right," he admitted. "We've overlooked just how much you've put in. I'm trying to change that." It wasn't a sweeping apology, but it was a start. And that in itself was something. It wasn't the full reckoning I once longed for, but it was a move toward shared understanding. Following Dr. Lorraine Whitfield's recommendation, I started seeing a therapist who specialized in complex family relationships. those weekly appointments became a much-needed outlet, giving me room to unpack years of emotional neglect and how deeply it had shaped my view of myself. I came to understand that although I couldn't rewrite the past, I could reinterpret its meaning and decide how much influence it would have on my future. The dysfunction in your family was never your doing. My therapist reminded me time and again, but the work of healing from it, that belongs to you. That recovery took many forms. Some days it meant enforcing strong, unshakable boundaries in how I interacted with Deborah and Michael. Other days, it looked like sitting with the quiet sorrow of never having received the kind of support I once yearned for. The most difficult part was learning to untangle my identity from constant external approval, to recognize that my value was not something others had to validate, not even my own parents. What surprised me most was where the deepest healing began: mentorship. The scholarship named in my honor had just awarded its first recipient, a driven sophomore juggling 3 part-time jobs just to stay enrolled. Our monthly check-ins quickly became a part of my calendar I looked forward to. In guiding her through her academic journey, I was in a way revisiting my own, but this time with clarity, compassion, and the power to turn past hurt into something useful. "How do you deal with the injustice of it all?" she asked me during one of our talks. Watching others get every opportunity handed to them while you work yourself to the edge. Her question struck straight into the core of what I was still learning. "The unfairness doesn't go away," I told her gently. "But it doesn't have to control you. When you build something entirely on your own brick, by hard-earned brick, no one else can claim it, and no one can take it from you. There's a certain liberation in that, even when it comes at a steep emotional price." The way she nodded told me she understood far more than her age might suggest. Guiding her through her challenges had a mirrored effect. It forced me to keep reevaluating my own journey. But the most transformative shift came when I finally saw my struggles not as scars, but as sources of strength. The grit, independence, and perseverance I was forced to develop weren't just survival tools anymore. They had become traits I chose to own, qualities that gave me power. The favoritism I endured from Deborah and Michael, the constant emotional sidelining, it could have broken me. But instead, it forged something solid, unyielding. That understanding didn't wipe away the pain. It didn't justify the way they treated Chloe and me so differently. But it changed how I carried it. Not as bitterness I had to hide, but as proof that I had learned how to rise, even when no one clapped. Just last weekend, I returned to campus for a small event, honoring the donors and recipients of the scholarship. Dr. Evelyn Clark joined me. Over time, our connection had grown beyond professor and student. It had deepened into real friendship. We walked along the old brick paths together, sharing stories about long nights in the research wing, and marveling at how far life had taken me. "Do you know what I admire most about your story?" she asked, as we passed the library, the place I had once treated as a second home. "My refusal to give up," I replied, half laughing. She shook her head gently, correcting me. "No, your ability to turn hardship into purpose. So many people face injustice. Very few take that pain and shape it into something meaningful, not just for themselves, but for others too." Her words cut right to the truth. I was only just beginning to embrace that the truest form of healing doesn't stop at survival. It happens when you turn your wounds into a foundation others can stand on. As the reception for the scholarship drew to a close, I watched the young woman selected in my name, speaking enthusiastically with several professors. Her self-assurance seemed to bloom with every new conversation. In her drive and spirit, I caught glimpses of who I used to be. But there was a vital distinction: she wasn't facing it alone. What I never had in place, a reliable support system, was now being built around her, and for the many who would come after. Later that night, back in the quiet of my apartment, I opened my journal and wrote about what the moment meant. It felt like something had come full circle. I ended the entry with a line that felt like both a closing and a beginning. Maybe the most powerful way to respond to injustice isn't just to rise above it, but to end the cycle entirely, to turn what once hurt into its exact opposite. The favoritism I experienced from Deborah and Michael had left its mark. It taught me damaging things about my worth, but it also showed me what truly counts in life. Not what you're handed, but what you build from the ground up. Not what you receive, but what you give to others. Not the validation you chase, but the principles you uphold for yourself. Healing. Real healing is still an ongoing process. Some days, that old ache sneaks up on me when I least expect it. There are still moments with family that awaken those deeply rooted childhood patterns. But now, I can recognize those moments without letting them define me. The narrative of my life is no longer centered on what was denied to me. It's grounded in what I've created despite it. If I've learned anything through all of this, it's that our deepest wounds often hide our greatest power. Not because the pain is inherently meaningful, but because overcoming it uncovers strengths we didn't know we had. The favoritism and unequal treatment that once shaped my identity now lives as just a single chapter in a much broader story that I'm writing myself. One decision, one day, one act of courage at a time. Have you ever had to pave your own road while others were handed a map? I'd love to hear your story. Drop it in the comments. If any part of my journey resonated with you, please consider subscribing. And if someone in your life needs a reminder that their value isn't determined by others, share this with them. Thank you for being part of this moment. And please remember this: your worth exists with or without anyone else's recognition. Tap that like button, subscribe, and join me next week for another real story from the complicated path we're all walking.